Chapter 8. Ozma of Oz to the rescue. Spoilers much? I know the title of the book is Ozma of Oz, so I would have expected her here before Chapter 7, to be honest. But, can we not give away what's going to happen for the sake of my podcast? Anyways, Nanda brought Dorothy bread and water for her supper, and she slept on a hard stone couch. That's not a couch. With a single pillow and a sylvan coverlet, which I assume is a female cover. In the morning, she leaned out of the window of her prison in her tower to see if there was any way to escape. The room was not very high up when compared to our modern buildings, but it was far up enough above the trees and the farmhouses to give her a good view of the surrounding country. To the east she saw forest, with sands beyond it and ocean beyond that. There was even a speck upon the shore that she thought might be a chicken coop in which she had arrived in the singular country. Then she looked to the north and saw a deep but narrow valley lying between two rocky mountains, and a third mountain that shut off the valley at the further end. Westward, the fertile land of Ev suddenly ended a little way from the palace, and the girl could see miles and miles of sandy desert that stretched further than her eyes could reach. It was this desert, she thought, with much interest, that alone separated her from the wonderful land of Oz, and she remembered sorrowfully that she had been told no one had ever been able to cross this dangerous waste but herself. Once a cyclone had carried her across it, and a magical pair of silver shoes had carried her back again. Yeah, we know. There's a whole book about it. But now she had neither cyclone nor silver shoes to assist her, and her condition was sad indeed. Indeed. For she had become a prisoner of this disagreeable princess, who insisted that she must exchange her head for another one that she was not used to, and which might not fit her at all. And I had assumed that Dorothy knew how heads worked. But that appears either the author doesn't know how heads work, or Dorothy, or both. I don't know what's going on. Really, there seemed no hope for her from her old friends in the land of Oz. Well, we know the title of the chapter. So there goes that cliffhanger. Thoughtfully, she gazed out from her narrow window. On the desert, not a living thing was stirring. Wait, though. Someone was stirring on the desert. Something her eyes had not observed at first. Now it seemed like a cloud, and now it seemed like a spot of silver. Now it seemed to be a massive rainbow of colors that moved swiftly toward her. What could it be, she wondered. Let me guess, Ozma of Oz to the rescue. Then gradually, but in a brief space of time nevertheless, the vision drew near enough to Dorothy to make out what it was. A broad green carpet was unrolling itself upon the desert. Hence the rainbow colors. While advancing across the carpet was a wonderful procession that made the girl open her eyes in amazement as she gazed. First came a magnificent golden chariot, drawn by a great lion and an immense tiger, who stood shoulder to shoulder and trotted along as gracefully as a well-matched team of thoroughbred horses. Within the chariot, that was a beautiful girl clothed in flowing robes of silver gauze and wearing a jeweled diadem upon her dainty head. She held in one hand the satin ribbons that guided her astonishing team, and in the other an ivory wand that separated in the top into two prongs, the prongs being tipped by the letters O and Z, made of glistening diamonds set so closely together. The girl seemed neither older nor larger than Dorothy herself, and at once the prisoner in the tower guessed that this lovely driver of the chariot must be Ozma of Oz, of whom she had so lately heard from TikTok. Following close behind the chariot, Dorothy saw her old friend, the Scarecrow, riding calmly astride a wooden sawhorse, which pranced and trotted as naturally as any meat horse might have done. Meat horse? That's what we're calling horses? And then came Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodman, who of course Dorothy doesn't know his name is Nick Chopper, right? Only we do. With his funnel-shaped cap tipped carelessly over his left ear, his gleaming axe over his right shoulder, and his whole body sparkling as brightly as it had ever done in the old days when she first knew him. The Tin Woodman was on foot, marching at the head of the company of 27 soldiers, of whom some were lean and some fat, some short and some tall, but all 27 were dressed in handsome uniforms and various designs and colors, no two being alike in any respect. Behind the soldiers, the green carpet rolled itself up again, so that there was always just enough of it for the procession to walk upon, in order that their feet might not come in contact with the deadly, life-destroying sands of the desert. The sand will kill you? Or it's just like hot, and you can't walk on it for very long? It's unclear. Dorothy knew at once it was a magic carpet she beheld. Yes, I got that too. I just assumed we all knew. And her heart beat high with hope and joy as she realized she was soon to be rescued and allowed to greet her dearly beloved friends of Oz, the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, and the Cowardly Lion. Who doesn't get a name? Nick Chopper gets a name. My name is still Cowardly Lion. The girl felt herself as good and rescued as soon as she recognized those in the procession, for she well knew the courage and loyalty of her old comrades. Yeah, but not the intelligence of them. And she also believed that others who came from their marvelous country would prove to be pleasant and reliable acquaintances. As soon as the last bit of desert was passed, and all the processions, from the beauty and dainty Ozma to the last soldier, had reached the grassy meadows of the land of Ev, the magic carpet rolled itself together and entirely disappeared. Oh! Then the chariot driver turned her lion and tiger into a broad roadway leading up to the palace, and others followed, while Dorothy still gazed from her tower in eager excitement. They came quite close to the front door of the palace and then halted, the Scarecrow dismounting from his sawhorse to approach the sign fastened to the door, that he might read what it said. Dorothy, just above them, could keep silent no longer. "Here I am! Here I am!" she shouted as loudly as she could. "Oh, here I am! Here I am!" shouted Dorothy as loudly as she could. "Here's Dorothy!" "Here's Dorothy?" "Dorothy who?" asked the Scarecrow, tipping his head to look upward until he nearly lost his balance and tumbled over backwards. See, this is what I meant about she's not really as good as rescued as she might think. "Well, Dorothy Gale, of course. Your friend from Kansas," she answered. "Why, hello, Dorothy," said the Scarecrow. "What in the world are you doing up there?" So it's just happenstance. They're passing by. How convenient. "Well, nothing," she called down, "because there's nothing to do. Save me, friend, save me." "You seem to be quite safe now," replied the Scarecrow. "But I'm a prisoner. I'm locked in, and I can't get out," she pleaded. That's all right," said the Scarecrow. "You might be worse off, little Dorothy. Just consider the matter." Oh, boy. "You can't get drowned, or be run over by a wheeler, or fall out of an apple tree. Some folks would think they were lucky to be up there." "Well, I don't," declared the girl, "and I want to get down immediately to see you and the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion." "Very well," said the Scarecrow, nodding. "It shall be just as you say, my little friend. Who locked you up?" "Well, the Princess Langwilda, who's a horrid creature," she answered. At this, Ozma, who had been listening carefully to the conversation, called to Dorothy from her chariot, asking, "Why did the princess lock you up, my dear?" "Because," exclaimed Dorothy, I wouldn't let her have my head for her collection, and take that old cast-off head in exchange for it." "Whew! I do not blame you," exclaimed Ozma promptly. "I will see the princess at once and oblige her to liberate you." "Oh, thank you very, very much," cried Dorothy, who, as soon as she heard the sweet voice of the girlish ruler of Oz, she knew that she would soon love her dearly. Ozma now drove her chariot around to the third door of the wing, upon which the Tin Woodman boldly proceeded to knock. Ozma now drove her chariot round to the... I read that already. As soon as the maid opened the door, Ozma, bearing in her hand her ivory wand, stepped into the hall and made her way into the drawing room, followed by all her company, except the lion and the tiger. And the 27 soldiers made such a noise and clatter that the little maid Nanda ran away screaming to her mistress, whereas the Princess Langwalder, roused to great anger by this rude invasion of her palace, came running into the drawing room without any assistance whatever. There she stood before the slight and delicate form of the little girl of Oz and cried out, "How dare you enter my palace unbidden? Leave this room at once, or I will bind you and your people in chains and throw you into my darkest dungeons." "What a dangerous lady," murmured the Scarecrow in a soft voice. "Well, she seems a little nervous," replied the Tin Woodman. But Ozma only smiled at the angry princess. "Sit down, please," she said quietly. "I have traveled a long way, and you must listen to what I have to say." "Must?" screamed the princess, her black eyes flashing with fury, for she still wore that number 17 head. "Must? To me?" "To be sure," said Ozma. "I am the ruler of the land of Oz, and I am powerful enough to destroy all your kingdoms if you so wish. Yet I do not come here to do harm, but rather to free the royal family of Ev from the thrall of the Gnome King, and the news having reached me that he is holding the Queen and her children prisoners." Hearing these words, Langwalder became suddenly quiet. "I wish you could, indeed, free my aunt and her 10 royal children," she said eagerly, "for if they were restored to their proper forms and stationed, they could rule the kingdom of Ev themselves, and that would save me a lot of trouble and worry. At present, there are at least 10 minutes every day that I must devote fairs to the state, and I would likely be able to spend my whole time admiring my beautiful heads." "Then we will discuss this matter," said Ozma, "and try to find a better way to liberate your aunt and cousins. But first you must liberate another prisoner, the little girl you have locked up in your tower." "Of course," said Langwalder readily. "I had forgotten all about her. That was yesterday, you know, and a princess cannot be expected to remember today what she did yesterday." "Well, actually, come with me, and I will release the prisoner at once." Well, that was easy. We just had to remind her that Dorothy existed, and then she's like, no big deal. Diplomacy, am I right? So Ozma followed her, and they passed up the stairs that led to the room in the tower. While they were gone, Ozma's followers remained in the drawing room, and the Scarecrow was leaning against a form he had mistaken for a copper statue, when the harsh metallic voice said suddenly in his ear, "Get off my foot, please. You are scratching my polish." "Oh, excuse me," he replied, hastily drawing back. "Are you alive?" "No," said Tick-Tock. "I am only machine, but I can think and speak and act when I am properly wound up. Just now my action is run down, and Dorothy has the key to it." "That is all right," replied the Scarecrow. "Dorothy will soon be free,
and then she will attend to your works. But it must be a great misfortune not to be alive. I am sorry for you."
"Why?" asked Tick-Tock.
"Because you have no brains, as I have,"
said the Scarecrow. "Oh, yes, I have," returned Tick-Tock. "I am fitted with Smith and Tinker's improved combination steel brains. They are what make me think. What sort of brains are you fitted with?" Like, this is just a normal conversation for them.
"I don't know," admitted the Scarecrow. "They were given to me by the great Lizard of Oz, and I didn't get to examine them before he put them in, but they work splendidly, and my conscience is very active. Do you have a conscience?"
"No," said Tick-Tock. And no heart, I suppose," added the Tin Man, who had been listening with interest to this conversation. The fact that they were not able to move on with their lives after meeting the lizard, they're still on about how great their brains and heart are. Live your life, man.
"Oh," said Tick-Tock.
"And then," continued the Tin Woodman, "I regret to say that you are greatly inferior to my friend the Scarecrow and myself." Okay. For we are both alive, and he has brains which do not need to be wound up in my bosom. Yeah, they're just being jerks. "I congratulate you," replied Tick-Tock. "I cannot help being your inferior, for I am a mere machine." I wouldn't count on that, being inferior. I mean, yeah, to be fair, some people are better at other things than others. For instance, I think we're all better writers than this author. But we're not going on about it. We'll bring it up, sure. But our point is for us to become better literary critics. All that to say, let's continue. When I am wound up, I do my duty by going, just as my machinery is made to go. I have no idea how full of machinery I am."
"I can guess,"
said the Scarecrow, looking at the machine man curiously.
"Someday I would like to take you apart and see how you are made."
Goodness gracious. All right, we're almost done with this chapter, thankfully. "Do not do that, I beg of you," said Tick-Tock, "for you could not put me together again, and my usefulness would be destroyed."
"Oh, are you useful?"
"Are you useful?" "Huh." "Very," said Tick-Tock.
"In that case,"
the Scarecrow kindly promised,
"I won't fool with your interior at all, for I am a poor mechanic."
"No kidding."
"And might mix you up."
"Thank you," said Tick-Tock. Just then, Ozma re-entered the room, leading Dorothy by the hand, and followed closely by Princess Langwilder.